turned out to be completely unreliable assholes.
Hi, Tim.
Hi, Ryan.
Hi.
If that really is your name.
It is.
All right.
Tim.
It's not Saint Ryan, formerly just Katie.
No.
Oh, okay.
Not that I know of.
Well, you're, what do they call that? An unreliable narrator, I would say.
Indeed. All things we'll be talking about today for our episode today. Where are you? Oh, yeah. I got to say hi to you listening, too. I mean, I want to. I don't have to.
You gotta.
But I like to, and I want to. That's what we do. So hi, Tim, and hello, everyone. Welcome. Willkommen, bienvenue to Dismembering Horror, the podcast show where myself, Ryan, not Maud Katie McDuffie.
Yeah. And myself, Tim Aslin.
That's right.
The one and only. Actually, there's other Tim Aslins in the world.
Timothy.
Much to my disdain.
Timothy Ryan Aslin. There's two Ryans
That's true.
Between us.
Sharing the Ryan name.
The two of us with you here in spirit, we talk about what worked for us, what did not work for us, and anything else that we found interesting or noteworthy about a horror film. That's right. And I put that emphasis on the we's because it's like any reviewing, like any dismembering layered with opinionizing and talking about what worked and didn't work. It's very much subjective, Tim and myself, subjective, fun point of views.
Disagree. Everything I say should be held to the highest standard. That is what is.
Sure.
That's my new decree. I'm right. You're wrong. The end.
Hey, I'm down to mix it up. Yeah, man. All right.
My opinion is the right opinion.
Well, Tim, I'm very curious to know what the right opinion is for today's film.
I'm for it.
Saint Maud. From 2019, actually. Well, it had a Toronto International Film Festival premiere in 2019, then premiered at another festival in its home country of Britain in 2020, and then finally got released widely available to all in 2021. So we're counting it as a new release, which it is in a certain regard, even though it's got that 2019 moniker. And Tim, just in true how things work out here fashion, it's fun, you know, how we went from two movies based on stories by the same author for our for 2 movies ago in a row, where we did what were they called?
The Body Snatcher.
Yep.
They're both by Robert Louis Stevenson.
Yep. Into Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson.
That guy.
We covered 2 Saint movies in a row. Last week, we did Santa Sangre, which Santa, of course, means saint. And here we are with Saint Maud. So we're covering the Saint, Blood Saint, and the Maud Saint in a row.
Pretty bloody, both of them.
And we should say, as I like to say here, some credits where credit is due. Saint Maud from 2019 was written and directed by Rose Glass, which I just got to say off the bat, Tim, what a cool name. And
yeah,
it's just like one of those names where, you know, when they put her name in the trailer and then like when there's articles and you see, oh, Rose Glass's new film, Rose Glass, even Saint Maud, Rose Glass, you like, it just feels right. Like you get it and it helps color the movie in a way. Like even the main actor's name, Morfydd Clark, like Jennifer L is and then the other star. It's just all feels like it illuminates the isness of the movie, which is just fun. Like, oh yeah, Saint Maud, Rose Glass. Okay, cool. I kind of get it. I'm getting it.
Agreed.
Cool.
It's got a quite the sort of aura around it, this movie.
Indeed. As often films with well done films with religious overtones and undertones tend to do.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you'd like to say before we watch our trailer?
Nope.
Great. Then let's watch the trailer for brought to us by A24 here stateside. Originally premiered in 2019. Written and directed by Rose Glass. Saint Maud.
Dear God, your presence graces the air, and soon everyone will see.
Hi, are you Maud?
Yes, hi. It takes nothing special to mop up after the dying,
You're prettier than the last one.
but to save a soul, that's quite something. Bless Amanda's body and bless her mind, which is shrouded in darkness.
When you pray, do you get a response?
Oh, it's like he's physically in me. It's how he guides me.
My little savior.
Hey, I thought that was you. What you up to?
I'm a private carer.
You're still nursing?
What?
They know what happened.
All the good girls go to hell. 'Cause even God herself.
I just want to see you loosen up.
I've got more important things on my mind.
Ugh, using that Billie Eilish music, that was so cool.
Is that who that is?
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, you aren't up on your Billie Eilish. You should.
I'm not. I'm sorry.
You should listen to her album. It's really good. And her new, she did the James Bond title for the new James Bond movie, and it's so good.
I think I heard that actually.
Anyway,
Somebody played it for me.
just so hip and cool.
I'm not against it. I what I've heard of hers, I've enjoyed.
Did you enjoy that in the trailer just now?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Did you enjoy the trailer overall just now?
Yes.
And I want to know how you enjoyed the movie overall just whenever you watched it. Did you, per our rating system, would you tell yourself, do you know it all? Would you tell yourself to avoid it, stream it, rent it, or buy it?
You know, it's so good. And but I'm not sure I'm a buy. That's weird. I don't know. I'm in this weird like in between of like I guess I'll expand on my reasoning or feelings about it, but I think I'm like the strongest rent you can possibly be. That's what I am.
Yeah, it's funny how we kind of, we deliberately do our rating at the beginning because for you, our listeners, we like to, and I guess for ourselves, we like to sort of check up at like, where are we at in this, at the starting point of this discussion, more so than it feeling like we could probably give a better rating after our discussion or a more accurate rating. Because well done horror films especially, like just digesting it and talking about it does help. That's my gut feeling too right now, Tim. But like when movies are this overall well done, they do tend to grow on me. And I kind of we watched it the only place you can, not in theaters, on EPIX, and like the quality wasn't great, or it was just not, I don't know, it was just bugging me a little bit. And then like it seems like it would be such a good movie for watching in theaters. And I'm just bummed I didn't get to see it that way. And I feel like this whole movie is just one of those descent into crazy hell, isolation, trapped with a person movies, which just I don't know, to be completely isolated with that person on a big screen in a dark theater really, really, really helps it. So, I don't know. I may regret it later, but
I know, me too.
So just like I forget, like Midsommar, like that's one of my, any of these movies that I've gone on to change from a rent to a buy, I just regret so much. But
well, I think that actually Midsommar's an interesting thing to sort of compare this to for me, that like I can explain what Midsummer has that this doesn't, that kind of keeps me from being a buy.
Got it. Well, great. Well, I mean, and all is to say, what I was just saying, I'm at the same place where I give the highest possible rent right now, and I may regret it later, and that's just where we're at.
Yeah, exactly.
As I've always said, my favorite movies usually, sometimes they do, but a lot of the times I have a whole like relationship that spans with them, that grows over time. So anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the pursuing potent possibilities, as you like to say, like in this movie, they are pursued for sure, but it didn't culminate fully for me to get me to a buy. That's kind of where I'm at. Don't get me wrong, I love the ending. We'll talk about it, but like, I think that's kind of the thing. It's like there's some stuff that it chooses to go in a different direction, which I think is fine.
I want to hear, we'll get into it more what that direction is, but on my kind of like second morning viewing that I just had, I realized how much what is happening is like really digging into these sort of themes and questions at play. So it's on a second viewing, I saw the potent possibilities pursued more potently. So
I can see where that might be true.
And kind of how I was also clarifying how first time viewings are for me. It's just like the experience taking it in the first time. Like I'm not reading into it a lot on a first viewing. So anyways, that. Great. Well, let's get into picking it apart more with what are we even talking about. How about a little summary here?
All right. I'll give you a summary. I'll give you a summary right now. Maud, formerly Katie. The reason she changed her name is because she was a nurse and she killed a patient. We don't know how or under what circumstances. She's now doing hospice care privately. She takes a job with a rich, paralyzed former dancer who's not super old. She's young, to be honest, in the scope of things, but she's got cancer, so she's dying. And she lives in a mansion on a hill. And so
in a seaside English town.
That's right. And so Maud, we realize very quickly that Maud is very religious, and quickly believing that her search for a purpose has been kind of answered with this patient, and that her job is to save, or what would you call that?
That's a good way to put it. Like, we know what you mean, like in religious terms. Save, save Amanda,
save her soul, I guess.
Yeah.
And that causes some conflict. And ultimately, Amanda, is the patient. They kind of they push each other's buttons, and Maud gets fired. And man, does she not like that! And she really goes kind of spiraling, pun intended, and listens to who she thinks is God telling her what she has to do, and then she does it, and it's intense. The end.
Great. All right.
There's a lot of I think the big things are sort of the psychological toll that indoctrination of any like intense religious view mixed with potential mental instability, and how that can spiral really quickly if left unchecked is sort of, I think, an undercurrent of this.
Or left alone.
Or left alone, right, exactly.
Great. All right. That was great. So should we move on then?
Yeah. Well, I'll just say the reason it's called Saint Maud is that's a moniker given to her by Amanda, because Amanda kind of plays along with this idea of Maud wanting to save her.
Yes. My saint, my angel, Maud.
Right.
Great. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure we'll have plenty to say for our next section, so let's get into it. Here we go. What worked?
What worked for you? What worked for you? What worked for you?
It worked like a charm.
What worked? What worked for you?
Got to get out of the way, like I like to do. Morphid Clark as Maud. I was never like questioning she was just an actor. It was just one of those performances where I was just totally just watching a person just go about. Like I could not. It was just so weird watching her in interviews and stuff afterwards. Like, oh my God, just talk about just buying right into it. And it is so tricky too, because she's playing a very like atypical millennial in that, you know, as far as just being here in Los Angeles, you don't meet a lot of super devout, you know, Christian people our age. But you know, they exist, of course, but just she just pulled that off, sold that to me. She pulled everything off. It was so incredible. Morphid, your performance was as cool as your name.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, even though I know she's an actress and whatever, I didn't watch any interviews. It is almost harder to imagine her as a real person and not this character.
Yeah,
it's strange, but that's pretty amazing, and you know, worth commending. I guess. You know what's weird? I guess this is a thing of note, but whatever. Since we're talking about her, I spent a lot of this movie being distracted by my brain trying to figure out who she looks like. And I mean, I was like, she's the daughter of a famous actor because she looks like some guy, and I can't place it. I still can't place it, and it's driving me fucking crazy. But that's my problem.
So you didn't even have an end to that story.
Nope. I can't figure it out. Okay. If anybody has an idea, let me know.
Well, who
does she look like?
I thought Jennifer L as Amanda Cole looked a whole lot like Meryl Streep.
You know, Jennifer L, I think, looks like a couple people. Meryl Streep is one of them. And, oh shit, now I'm not going to remember her name. The woman who won an Academy Award for Dances with Wolves. She's so good, too. She was also in Battlestar Galactica. Let me see if I can figure out. Mary McDonnell is her name. Jennifer L is sort of like, yeah, I was like, wait, is she related to Mary McDonnell? Obviously not. But yeah, lately, you know, for some reason, my brain thinks everybody looks familiar. I don't know what's wrong with me, or if I'm just like, because I'm not out and like around other actual human beings, and I'm just like watching media. Maybe it has to do with that, but everybody looks familiar to me lately.
That's different. That's different from looking alike. So kind of segue there. You're saying the people who seem familiar to you. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, these are.
But anyway,
this
Jennifer
is
L is so good. Like she's so good. I've seen her in other stuff too. Like she's been around, but you know, she was in like Contagion. Oh God, off the top of my head, I can't think of any others. But like, she's a really good actress that I think she doesn't have that sort of standout like recognition, but whatever. She's fantastic. She was a stage actress, so she's done her thing.
There's, and both of them, you know, as part of their performances, these characters, they're writing these really interesting lines that are just so specific and tricky to pull off. You know, like in any horror movie, the horror lies in contradictions of having no sense of reality, and therefore performances that can be emblematic of a rich person with contradictions is so important and offers so much. So like the way, like for Amanda as an example, Jennifer L., how her line that I just thought was like so interesting and actually then put you right into Maud's shoes was like, this person, Amanda, she's like endeared to Maud, but then also amused by Maud. Like she wants to, it rides this line between kind of almost like condescending, humoring Maud, but also being really touched and interested and wanting to genuinely experience what she's experiencing. Like it gets us to sort of sympathize with Maud in a way that makes me feel icky of like, you get like, you felt like the urge to slap her too. Like I would never slap anyone ever, but like you get where she's coming from in a way, like just when her frustration with Amanda.
Yeah. Well, and Amanda is, kind of doing the like, batting the mouse around without killing it. Like she's messing with Maud.
Yeah, exactly. But
here's the thing.
You get it's coming from a good place though.
It kind of is. Yeah. I think that the genius of this movie really, really lies in the writing of these characters. Everybody in this movie is a reflection of Maud in some way. So like Amanda, they all kind of have the same, not problem, but the same thing going on, right? Like Maud is trapped in her view of the like dogma that she believes in. And so and Amanda is essentially trapped as well, right? Like she's trapped in this dying body. And the sex worker whose character name I can't remember, Joy maybe, she's kind of a reflection of Maud as well, right?
Carol
like is it Carol?
I didn't know she was a sex. I thought that she was a girlfriend.
Well, she gets paid.
I forgot that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's sort of why I'm thinking that's the case. So yeah, Carol as well. Sort of she's almost like the antithesis of Maud's beliefs, but they're doing what they're doing out of this idea of what is right for them. And so I think that when you it's kind of that thing that Michael Tucker talks about in one of his letters from the screenplay.
Letters,
what is it?
Lessons
from the screenplay. Thanks.
Dear YouTube.
Yeah. The thing of, like in American Beauty, the American Beauty episode, he talks about this. When you take a character and you have every other character be sort of like a representation of different parts of that central character. And sometimes it can be antithetical to those parts or whatever, but it's all kind of this, it's like the spokes to the wheel. And Maud is the hub of the wheel, and then you have these other characters that are kind of the spokes. And so they're all kind of pointing at these different things that relate specifically to Maud's character. And I just think that's such a sign of really great writing, but just like the depth of which you go to create that structure within the characters to kind of further your like, the what compels us in the movie and what compels the characters. So I just think it's really good writing and storytelling.
Yeah, because we see, we get this, and she really doesn't like, she tells the sex worker stop seeing her, and she's just like looking at, when she looks at Amanda, just texting, she just like, oh, all these evil influences are after Amanda kind of thing. But yeah, kind of like what you're saying, reflections of herself. We get a glimpse into her past where she was kind of bar hopping and lascivious, seeing different men and all, just like what she came to then, condemn later on. You said Maud her trap, her Achilles heel, whatever is her devout religiousness. And I guess I want to like dig into that further. I see it as she views things only in extremes.
Yes.
First of all, like a this or that outlook. And she also, it's like what you see with this sort of, I don't know, you call it like, the devout religiousness, even though you can be devout, and it's misconstruing, I feel like, the actual messaging of it, of like, the body of Christ in Christian terms, the message of we are all God, we are not separate from God. But this is an example of someone in their literal isolation just does not at all think in those terms of like, I have my own worth. I am God, in quotes, so to speak, too. I'm part of this greater thing. Everything that I worship and look up to, it's something only outside of herself. And she's, basic. That's why it's so good when she's doing things like inflicting pain on herself. Like, no, come on. Like, you don't need to do that.
Well, it's such an interesting construct, right? Because, in one way of looking at it, she is taking this religious way of, dogma or doctrine type stuff, and she is essentially saying, I am completely at the mercy of what you want, you, God, or whatever. And so you lead the way, tell me what to do. I'm your servant. I'm at your mercy. That kind of, outlook is kind of what she keeps pushing. But she also is trying to impress upon everybody else this way of looking at the world. So really what we're talking about is how we define control. And so it becomes this thing of like, she's at the mercy of God and giving up total control to this idea.
She has no autonomy when Amanda represents someone who's kind of all autonomous.
Totally. And so you get this internal conflict constantly. And I think what I really love about this movie is that we are given a very specific sort of reason for her, or a couple reasons for her to have the outlook that she has in the first place, right? Like, she is a nurse. Just by putting her into the medical profession, there's this idea of like wanting to control or have some control over the outcome of nature, and like preventing somebody from dying, or, like helping them not be sick. Like that at its core has this element of controlling the course of things.
Yeah.
And, and then she, of course, the big traumatic moment, the thing that has sort of really catapulted her, is trying to save somebody and killing them. And so the whole thing is sort of predicated on that moment, the paradox of an attempt at saving somebody doing the exact opposite.
Yeah.
And so the whole movie is just a series of other moments where her attempts at saving somebody result in the opposite. And it's just dominoes. It's so fucking cool.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because it's the opposite of her point of view, but like her point of view being like when she says, I have little time for, this is her talking to herself, I have little time for creative types as they are self-involved. She doesn't see that everything she's doing means she's the most self-involved person.
Yeah.
She's in her terms being so selfless as she sees it, she's doing anything but, because of how she's suffering and how it's all her point of view that is just so different and from anyone else's, but she just can't see that.
Right. And I think the not being able to see it is really the crux of the whole story overall, is that when you can't see that, you're at the mercy of this thing, Whereas, like, if we're looking at a character becoming enlightened or achieving some sort of altruism, which is sort of what she, in a weird, twisted way, what she thinks she's doing, but the disconnect that she has from reality, from herself, from how she impacts the people around her. Like, she really just falls off of contact with being an actual grounded human being and being able to, like, take stock in what's going on. Like, she falls into this other realm of just,
She sees stuff.
Yeah, I guess you could call it psychosis, maybe, or you could call it delusion, I guess. I don't know exactly what's appropriate, but
right.
She falls into this other realm that is detached from reality.
But I think where the horror lies is we're experiencing her reality with her, is just that question therein. Maybe everyone else are the ones actually missing out and not seeing things. Like, despite it being pretty clear, her way about things are just not it, as far as like what she's seeing and experiencing. Like, for example, one of the best, probably the biggest scare moment outside of the dummy laugh and the end credits of Goosebumps, it was in this movie for me out of everything that we watched. That will always be the scariest because it was meta, and for a half second I thought there was a little dummy person in your living room. But as far as a jump scare, this got me so hard when she goes to check up on her killer or whatever. No, she doesn't go there to kill her. She goes continue to save her, Amanda, on her bed after she gets fired for slapping her. And she summons her demon self and yells at her, and her mouth stretches out. I'm like, oh my God, I just jumped and just felt so accosted. But anyway, what I was saying, like, that's an example of Maud is seeing, Amanda's demon then, let's say, right? But
at least she she is seeing it, whether or not it's actually there. She is experiencing that.
But is it? It could also be. This is, I think, the horror is. I feel like I don't know what terms I'm thinking, but like that could just mean. I mean, this. Yeah. What if you look at it as like Maud is just extra sensitive? Like that's something. Like that Amanda really does have issues with selfishness or whatever. And you could say that sort of you could say that's what a demon actually is in real life. That's what that means, are these, negative personality traits. So imagine being so attuned to those that the chemicals in your brain, like they exaggerate, things, or show things for how they quote unquote really are, in a way that's just, there is no right and wrong at a certain point, because we all just are perceiving what our chemicals tell us. There is no tangible reality, in a certain sense.
Well,
you follow
that's there's a lot to unpack there. Well, where to begin with that sentiment? We live in a society that has certain agreed upon constructs, right? Like, the more we as beings interact with other beings, we come to these agreements, right?
Right, like people can be slaves and that's okay.
Sure. I mean, no, not that.
That was a social contract, though.
Right, but it wasn't agreed upon. As we evolved, more and more people realized that's not cool.
That was maybe, insensitive example. But the point being, society is always evolving, and there will always be people who disagree or are outside of how things are that then society does end up catching up with.
Sure. But the big difference here is that you have an individual saying that they know what's best. And the result is killing people. And we've agreed that that's probably not the best way to go about things. Demon or not. Like, we've agreed that we don't get to be the sort of the, I guess, judge, jury, and executioner of those things.
I gotta specify though, because I wasn't talking about like the right in her decision to kill the demon. I was just talking about her ability to see her as a demon.
Okay. Well, so great. Yeah. Okay. I get that. Let's say that there is a demon and she has that ability. She still does the wrong thing by our metric of right and wrong.
I guess to be a bit more, like back what I was just trying to say, like the thought that demons, in a historical sense too, really are it's just an embodiment of negativity.
Sure.
And people's brains are so powerful that they, might see them or witness them or feel them.
Manifestation, sure.
Because when you think of something as being real in that sense so much, that manifestation, and then I don't know. So that by that definition, demons are real,
Well, but so I think what you're, how you're coming at it is really what the movie is speaking to, is that, what we perceive as real really is a product of what's going on in our heads. I'm sort of saying the other thing does exist, and we've agreed to not just go off of what we perceive in our heads as like the end all be all. But this movie is posing that question, or at least presenting somebody who has allowed the inner brain perception to run the show.
Right.
I just to have no acknowledgement of like the outside agreement that goes on.
I just thought that it was just a horror, it's a scary concept to think of. Rather than her seeing things, she is just really, really sensitive in a way that other people aren't.
I think it is scary. Yeah, it is scary because it's blurring the lines of reality and of, like, I guess I keep saying this, but the sort of agreed upon like foundation of how we behave.
Yeah.
Or not even how we behave, of what is real. And which is really scary. Like when you start to break that down, it's like, oh shit.
Right. And that's I guess, what I was attempting to break down too. What is real, We aren't seeing what's in front of us, actually.
I mean, I think it's all such a fascinating thing to explore, where are the lines? Like
all sorts of lines.
Whew.
Well, like a line that I just really held on to this movie was kind of that theme, that question, the idea, and like what the two characters representative of, kind of coming off that line too. Not line as in line in the sand, but words. What I already said. I have little time for creative types as they are self-involved. Like, as if, she's viewing Amanda as a creative. She's dancing. Oh, well, how could you dedicate a life to dancing when, you gotta be putting nails in your feet to show your worship to, it's messed up, this line. But this idea of kind of that is a human question I wrestle with a lot. Is like, when is something enjoying life and when is something kind of revelry in a destructive way, let's say, or self-involved way, indulgent. And what's that line between just enjoying life and overindulgence?
Yeah.
So like, and we see that, when Maud's getting shifty-eyed at, I guess, the sex worker, and, the other times, at her party when that's leading up to her slap. Even like Amanda playing cards, she's having fun cheating, and Maud's like, "Well, it's no fun. You can't do that." Like right there, that so perfect for that. But that, Tim, I thought incredible how like when you have that theming question in mind, the kind of big poster moment of the movie is when she's getting all pained in her, you know, her good ecstasy has turned into kind of pained ecstasy. We see her skin almost just kind of burning on its own. And then she gets possessed by this power and like rises up, you know, back arched. But what was so good and just what made it so perfect was the fireworks going on in the background. You know, to put in terms of the theme I was just talking about, outside, you know, revelry. Is it good or is it bad? Is it too much? Fireworks represent that perfectly. You know, they're destructive. They could be too much, but at the same time, they're pretty. They're cool. You know, they're very emblematic of that line and that question. So then,
but to your point, in a way, it's a really good metaphor, because fireworks, when they're set off outside and people know that they're going off, you know, that it's a organized thing and it's a celebration, that works pretty well. We agree on that. Don't set fireworks off in your apartment without telling anybody. That would go bad. And this is sort of like playing around with, you know, that idea, right?
Well, when she's pained inside and the fireworks start going off, it's kind of you get this feel. It's like, oh, you know, overall just representative of the theme going on, that she's like, you know, this is important what I'm doing in here, not all those silly proles with their fireworks out there.
Right.
But then it's almost like what's so cool and why it's just sort of this endless paradoxical loop, whatever you get. She's almost proven right, because her pain, it then turns into a kind of like, she's an ecstasy. She's flying, like, and flying's way cooler than fireworks. So she is almost proven right by like embracing this pain and devoutness. She's doing something that's
from her perspective.
Yeah,
sure.
Exactly. But just the fact that it's not, that I don't know, it wasn't just like pure pain that she was in, but there was a moment of her reaching some kind of ecstasy despite her missing out on the fireworks like the rest of us would enjoy.
Yeah, and I think that sort of thing is that through line exists. The question of ecstasy versus whatever the opposite of ecstasy is, being whatever really strictly, you know, that the idea that ecstasy or pleasure or sexual pleasure in particular is bad. You know, that construct is kind of played around with, and literally Amanda plays with Maud's sense of that, you know, like toys with her and deceives her and plays along with it and says, oh no, I was just joking later, which is a real like holy shit moment. You know, that feeling of deception is really powerful and heartbreaking for Maud, but you know, the construct of listening to the voice in your head and believing that it's God when it may be the devil deceiving you that it's God. You know, that snaking into its tail sort of, you know, paradox or loop or whatever you want to call it is it shows that you actually the spiral metaphor that continues and visually continues to show up is really perfect for that, right? You know, the clouds spiraling or the whirlpools in the beer, or every time she looks in a drain and it's you know, it's spinning into the drain, the vortex, I guess you could call it. That's a perfect fucking symbol for this, because there's sort of this beauty in it. There's structural beauty, but it's also representative of like chaos and destruction, and you know, it's just.
But with like a focal end point too, like as if there's a
like
possibility to get somewhere.
You're getting sucked down into it.
Like
there's all this. Yep, there's all this symbolism within that is just so. It's so right on, and you know, take what you want from it. I mean, it feels right. So this, I don't know, man. This movie's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Just another example, or an example I was talking about, a flaw of hers being able to be looked at, like she's not including herself in her definition of God, was at the end when I guess she's like getting ready to go over and see Amanda, or I forget, right before she kills herself, but she's like takes stock of her apartment and cleans it after she realized she sort of let it go. But it's this sense that she's not at all doing it for her, or even just her apartment, like you'd want to put that intention into it when you're cleaning something. I want my space to be clean. It feels like she really is just doing this because she was commanded to, or out of respect for this sort of, God in the sky kind of God.
Well, yeah, and
man in the sky. Sorry, I should say, because it is. Right, it is eerie how they only refer to it as him. Too.
Yep. Well, and that comes as sort of a directly after her purging scene.
Yeah.
Right, like literal and figuratively. So she had to purge all of this stuff to see the appropriate way to carry forward. And so part of carrying forward is to clean up the sullied apartment of this purging.
Yeah.
And that, it is very, there's a word for this, and I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's this sort of, you're in service of the greater thing, which I think is a continual theme throughout this, is that there's this, I'm in service of a greater good kind of thing. And obviously being a nurse is a reflection of that, but it's like taken to the to an unhealthy extreme.
Yeah. Talk about taken to an unhealthy extreme. Question for you, just like felt like there was something in, I just had the thought, like when she slaps Amanda, it's huge at the moment, and it's just so well done. But I just kind of thought, I found myself kind of yelling at Maud at first. I'm like, your whole thing's supposed to be do unto others. Why would you slap someone? But then I realized, oh wait, if this was Maud, she would want her to be slapped because she's lost her way so bad.
That's right.
From Maud's point of view, she is helping her by physically harming her, by slapping her.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's all like the self, like there's this extreme set of beliefs within Christianity that aren't, that only a very small segment of people buy into, I think, especially now, because it is based around self-harm.
Yeah, like
right? Self-flagellation, or there's that thing that you put around your thigh that you like, that has like teeth on it. There are these, I don't remember what the sort of the offshoot that promoted that self-flagellation type stuff is, but her, it does exist.
Her slapping her, it just feels like it's on that same spectrum. Of course, not as bad as like, in the witch hunt times, or like when we watch the devils, of just being like, no, we're saving your soul by drowning you. We're saving, it's, again, that like total perversion of do unto others is just, right. Oh God, it's
yeah, I mean, I feel like we could go on and on and on about sort of the broader kind of thematic implications revolving. I mean, religion's a pretty big one to take a bite out of.
How about this? Another way to look at this theme that I thought was interesting is, just slapping the word addiction over it all. And
sure,
I thought it was interesting. She, in an interview, Rose Glass, she wasn't saying like this was an inspiration or whatever, but she was just kind of noting and observing, when they brought up Maud's kind of not your typical millennial, in that she's not addicted to her phone. And so Rose Glass was kind of like, yeah, she's, just when talking about addictions, he's like, yeah, but she is a kind of a millennial in the sense of she's just addicted to something else. And you could say, just very generally, this generation is addicted to their phones. And it is cool. She brought up Ingrid Goes West and an example of what that specific story would look like. But yeah, her addiction escalates from just kneeling on little what is she like crunches up
hard corn, corn seeds, kernels, to then putting
the nails in her shoes, to then ultimately killing herself. Like that's an addict searching for the bigger hit,
right? The self-harm stuff is pretty
but seeking that ecstasy, like that, the only way she's gonna get it is to do the most extreme version of it and set herself on fire. And she might experiencing it too in that moment, which is so horrifying.
Well, yeah, and I find it particularly horrifying, this idea of the only path toward salvation is standing up to pain, and like that proving that you can take pain somehow elevates you to being a better version of yourself. And that is such a twisted way to look at the world and to look at being, considering yourself good or righteous. And I think the idea of righteousness is pushed through this constantly, right? Like every character kind of has their own version of how they view righteousness and the judgment that sort of comes along with that. You see it in her friend, the nurse friend, who's like, are you, she questions and kind of judges the decision of Maud continuing to be in healthcare, because she's like, did you tell them that you like killed somebody accidentally? And so there's this sort of these different shades of how we look at righteousness. Amanda has her version of it too.
Yeah, I mean, you could also put it as maybe, I don't know how similar this is. It's connected to righteousness, but I picked up on that idea where it can also be looked at as like not being able to accept the other person for where they are at. It's as if they're trying to act. It's that difference between like you give someone an actual possibility of change by accepting them for who they are then and there, and then helping them to grow beyond that by, it feels almost like it's it's contradictory or something, but they're testing each other. They can't, and you get that with Amanda's friends, like as an example, like the way, if Amanda's friends are sort of representative of Amanda, just when Maud's is there, just trying to light the candles her own way, one of them comes in and is like, oh, kind of here, let me do it. You do everything too slow. Get the lights now. This like, you can't even be nice about it. This is not accepting someone for where they're at. Like maybe, it's funny because it's a lot in it just for a small example, but like, oh, here, she could have been friendly, like, here you go, just use my lighter, and then, that would be easier, kind of thing. And that would maybe get Maud to just feel that little bit of connection versus not, of being accepted for she didn't think of this other way to do it.
It's so interesting to me because there's, by having, this is a very true to I think a lot of our lives. We interact with people who view the world differently. And like you're saying, instead of sort of giving a little bit of space to sort of acknowledge and maybe like allow time to understand where the other person is coming from, we seem to be in this, common place of just, if you think differently or you behave differently than my construct, then you're wrong. And I need, and then the next step is I need to assert my way onto you. And that, that's a very, like, I think it's sort of a death spiral. Again, that's why I like that visual metaphor or whatever. That it's the opposite. It is the irony of that in the face of the basic ideas of altruism and sainthood, and like why anybody is considered having risen to this level of understanding that they should be, what's the word? They should be like propped up for being on another plane, for having altruism. It's such irony that that's what we're trying to do, and yet we just simply can't do it because we keep saying, no, you have to do it my way. It's like it is the opposite of the point.
Well, that's I mean, to
Does
tie
that make
this
any
into
sense what I just said?
Yes, and to tie it into what you were saying earlier, where you're kind of going back and forth, that idea of buying into a social contract. And I think we were both kind of pointing out the two sides of that, where there's at any given point in the history of society, there's the good that's being represented that we're all buying into and we find a truth in. And then there's a bad that most people are buying into but needs to change, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's funny, actually. I very recently came across a kind of a breakdown of, it's called Altitudes of Development. And it's so interesting to kind of apply it to film. You obviously can apply it to life, but it's a really cool chart to sort of see how we as humans, or at least an idea of how we as humans kind of separate ourselves on these different levels. And that ultimately, and this is talked about throughout all of human history, that there's this sort of higher level, the highest level of human kind of like understanding, that we talk about wanting, or that's the goal, or that's what we're striving toward. But so often we see that in the pursuit of that, it becomes perverted.
Yes. I another kind of, I think, micro example of that, but really says a lot. That's, like lighting the birthday candles I mentioned, of wanting to help someone, but you're actually doing more harm than good.
Right.
Is like in that same party scene, this is where I thought that was so good. Again, like the party being an extension of Amanda. And just this idea of that other line that we talked of, like, well, life should be, parties, and, you're allowed have that fun. And of course, Maud's just like, oh, all these hedonistic people.
Right.
It's like, I think there's some good truth to the, where they're coming from of like, Maud is, for her own sake, too saintly. And, kind of like Amanda points out, you're young, have some fun, but rather than, meeting her where she's at and then bringing her into the party, let's say, they dress her up as like a classic saint by like putting that, headdress on her, and immediately just kind of not taking where she's coming from seriously, therefore isolating her more.
Well, they're mocking her.
Yeah, mocking her, therefore then escalating to the slap moment. So it's...
Yeah, I just, all of what we're talking about is just so cool to me, as just, where you're coming from a thematic point of view, and then like the ways this movie has peeled that onion, I guess, is just really, really fantastic.
Some more, another poll quote that's right on that theme, theme stated questions, when Amanda goes... They're talking about someone that was just in the room, I guess. She goes, he has plugs. Did you see them? And, Maud goes, no. And then Amanda's just like, wow, no one sees what they don't want to. And that's, easily applied to both of them in that circumstances.
Oh,
that's
such a good theme stated kind of moment.
Especially, you have a bald person pointing out someone else being bald too. It's like,
right.
on her side of it too.
Yeah, it's laced with way more than just this flippant remark. It's got layers underneath it for sure. I think we have to.
I have specific moments.
Acknowledge some of these moments because they're woo boy.
Talked about the mouth stretch. Did not mention the intensity of the subsequent stabbing.
Oh man, I mean that scene, as far as a climactic sort of like final kill scene, is really good. Everything leading up to it, the use of color in this movie is just so good.
I say color and close-ups.
Yep. In particular, in this scene before, like as they're speaking, Maud has like kind of leaned in, and Amanda and her face are, an inch apart or something like that. And the way that it's lit is, I actually paused it and took a picture because I was like, I need this for my own personal reference because this is perfect filmmaking. You have Maud on the right of frame and Amanda on the left. Maud her face is slightly above Amanda, right? So there's this sort of dominance thing going on. Right down the middle of frame is a very clear color delineation between the orange that is reflecting on Maud's face and sort of spilling around her, and the blue, it's almost a blue-green actually, that Amanda is completely washed in. And there is virtually no opposing color on either one of them. And they're also both kind of in shadow. It's a pretty contrasty shot. But it's so beautiful, and it's sort of really emblematic of the broader moment, which is, at least from Maud's point of view, that she's on the side of the light and Amanda is on the side of the darkness, or different way of looking at it, Maud is on the side of warmth and Amanda is on the side of coolness or death, et cetera, et cetera. You could go on and how you describe that. But point being, it's just perfect lighting and framing for this moment. And there's a lot of examples throughout the movie of how that's used. And there's a lot of variation in it too, which I like. They don't get caught up in just like trying to do one thing over and over again. Like there's a malleability and to how scenes are lit and a progression of it. But man, that whole scene is just so intensely beautiful and super scary.
Wait, which one?
So that particular, the death, like Amanda's death scene is just incredible. And like, having said that, there's like 4 or 5 other scenes that are just as amazing for their own reasons.
Let's hear them.
Like, holy shit. Okay, well, we already mentioned one, the purging. Woof, I really don't like throw up. Like, I don't like seeing people throw up. That moment got me. and then of course,
pretty visceral,
as it leads to her I guess possession sort of thing and floating and the fireworks, like that's a whole nother color palette in that scene, and it is so beautiful. Like everything about it.
To point out something in that scene too, how cool and unique the setting is for this kind of imagery. It really just I don't know, it furthered the context of this kind of imagery for us. Really, really good stuff.
Yeah.
Seaside town.
I guess can you call it a masturbation scene? I don't know if that's necessarily the appropriate way to put it, but when Maud sits down next to Amanda and she's talking about feeling God inside of her and how he talks to her and all of that, and then they both sort of Maud has this kind of possessive moment where possession moment where she seems like she's I don't know how to describe it. It's so visceral.
Well, it's
too.
like how she described it. She feels him in her. She feels this energy of him.
Right. And like having her and Amanda both kind of doing that behavior, and kind of knowing that Amanda is maybe just putting her on.
I mean, I had the thought, but I trusted her then to be like.
I wondered, but I was like, well, maybe she, sure.
Yeah.
Maybe this is what's happening. But the whole way that scene is shot, and I think in particular, I think they do it 4 times where they actually physically distort Maud's face. Like they actually bend her face just a little bit. Like it's like her eyes go in opposite directions and her mouth kind of lengthens a little bit or distorts.
Because I think just real quick, stay on your. I don't want to throw you off your track, but just as far as like, the demons inside of us, and she sees, we talked about the demon by Amanda's mouth stretching in that moment where she decides to kill her. But to think of a demon in terms as your own, strictly in terms of your own inner demons, it's like the whole movie is just Maud fighting back that demon and telling herself it's something else.
Right. Man. Though each one of those moments, the way that they give you, it's so few frames of actually seeing the face distortion. It's perfect. Like it's just enough to get you to go, oh God, what is that? And then we're out. Like they cut away. Let's see. How many was that? Doesn't really matter. And the sex scene. The sex scene, having that end with her putting her hands through his chest as sort of this memory of the actual killing. If you and I were sitting watching this, every single one of these moments, I was just yelling. I was just like, oh my God. Like every single one. And to me, that really is sort of like, that's what I'm looking for, right? Like that's why, like I want to have that reaction. So each one of those scenes has such a different palette to it as well. And like, they're all shot differently, but they all live in the same world. I mean, it's just something about the filmmaking and like, it's just, it does feel like this is it's a familiar contemporary style, but it is really like its own thing. It's funny to me because I feel like Climax has a similar feel filmmaking wise.
Upside down shots.
Yeah, stuff. Oh my God, that upside down section. Damn, I forgot about that. It's so cool and so good. Another movie has it. The new version of Suspiria has it. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a modern European filmmaking sensibility that's sort of that we're seeing. But man, I'm really, really into it. So use of color, beautiful framing, messing with our perception of like the composition of a scene so that we feel where the character is. Those things are just, they're at their best right in this movie.
And I mean, the one that I mentioned I want to throw onto that list was use of close-ups, where something I'm always paying attention to, especially in movies like this, where we want it to be her subjective point of view, how she's experiencing everything. Like, I'm always thinking of like, yeah, okay, I get how you do that. But then you obviously want to couple it, though, with context shots of some wides and some of getting her from someone else's perspective. So just what that line is and how you execute that while still overall staying subjective is just really interesting to track for me, and just, how it works at the end and the balance of all that. But like what these close-ups are doing, I mean, so much. You have everything from allows you to sort of more fluidly and naturally get like her memories as images flashing forward, because like, let's say we've already experienced sort of these close-up glances with Amanda and not, you know, when she's back alone in her apartment thinking about it, freaking out about it all, plotting to go see Amanda. It's just, yeah, it's natural. It's exactly how I said, how you can work those in. So just from the sense of that, and then even in an inter-scene way, allowing for kind of a kind of half montage flow of just picking up these details. And then, of course, you know, what they're offering, those details are just, that's what gives us that subjectivity of all that matters is what she thinking is on her face, is her eyes are the only thing appearing out of, you know, some piece of furniture that's blocking her. Right, and then, you know, how she's experiencing what's around her too. Like, I loved those shots when she gets that book. And what was that author or the artist that's referenced in this that, you know, she gives her as a present?
William Blake.
Yeah. So but you just feel the thickness of these pages. You hear them in close up, so to speak, too. Like when she's cutting them with the scissors and you just like bite on it, that, you know, how thick the paper is, the sound of it is so cool. Like, and then from when she first gets it, that ribbon, seeing that in close up, just these like you've just all that offers where you just feel like how she's, the reverence that she's giving this book and these pictures. And then and I think my favorite close-ups too. I mean, the book stuff was so cool, everything I said, but I really loved at the beginning when you're just sort of easing into the movie and kind of getting some setting shots and whatnot. And there's close-ups before we know what it is or where we are. These slow red bubbling liquid that is tomato soup, we gather, but it just feels like you're in hell, essentially. It just feels like you're in the bubbling red, non-specific liquidness of hell. God, I love those shots so much. The rivers of hell.
Yeah, there's also, man, it's so beautiful. Like the outside shots, in particular at night, it really, really reminded me of Taxi Driver, actually. Like the sort of him walking through the red light district kind of, or driving through it scenes. You know, you have this almost documentary style feel. It's handheld and they're sort of like just sort of showing a, you know, slice of life of that town.
Like the guy putting his glass eye in at the fast food place.
Exactly. Or like there's a shot, you know, kind of a walking shot of like a guy outside a store playing a drum, you know, like little things like that. It gives us this sense of place. It also gives us a sense of like where her brain is, you know, she's sort of like the cacophony of that little sector of town. And like it's not super unfamiliar, but it is sort of her, it's the observational camera sort of style. And then we cut, you know, we sort of turn the camera around on her walking through it. So we really get this sense of like, she's just soaking it all in. And I think it's just really, really good filmmaking.
And then, and that allows you too, like when you have the moments where she then interacts with those surroundings, it just feels that much more realistic and grounded and natural. Like that was a great moment when it just, you know, so telling and great on so many levels, but when she's about to treat herself for a movie, but then instead gives the money to the guy on the street and doesn't see the movie.
But then she says under her breath, she's like, I forget what it is, but he's like, what'd you just say? She basically is like, God bless you, and may your pain like be good, sort of thing. It's something to that effect. Like it's like a backward sentiment. And he's like, what'd you say? And she's like, bye. But there's this like, it's like that little thing of like, I just did a good thing, so you need to like, I need to lash out is the whole movie in a weird way. It's so good.
I've got
maybe I should be a bi. God damn it.
I've got 2 more moments. One is the ending, and one is a surprise one. So which one you want to hear?
Let's do the ending because that's kind of my last one too.
Great. Well, I mean, you want to set the stage for us? Because I only have one specific thought, but I want to hear your thoughts on it.
Wow. Well, God, she's slayed the demon, at least as far as she's concerned, gruesomely killing Amanda.
Well, what did you like about it? Let's assume people have seen it.
It's sort of the perfect, it's the perfect step. We have fully left how do I put this? We've entered into a new realm. That's what it is. Like, forget about where we've left and what that implies, but like, we have officially, or at least Maud has officially left or moved into a new realm. She has the angel wings, which are so cool looking, like using this kind of light. I don't know how to describe it. It's a super cool effect. They're like made of light, I guess. And of course, then going to the beach and dousing herself in whatever that is, some sort of flammable liquid. I think the most compelling part of that moment is everybody on the beach kind of having this initial reaction of, oh my God, what's she doing? Like, somebody stop her. And the second she erupts in flames, it's what I think my takeaway is, we see from an objective point of view what she believes is happening, which is she becoming this sort of deity saint, like angel, whatever thing, that all of the people on the beach then just get on their knees and are like, holy shit, look, an angel.
Her last words, glory to God.
Right. And then we get, what do you think, 4 frames of her actually burning to death?
More than that, but yeah.
Holy smokes. And it just sort of like, to me, it really, drives home this overarching theme of like the perception of reality versus reality.
Dude, it was everything. That I feel like I've seen that technique before, of just like, okay, now here's the quick flash of what's actually going on and then cut away again. But to use that as an ending like this, I hadn't seen before, and it was so on point. I mean, come on, that was amazing. Just like that quick flash of it. Like you said, we're in a completely different place with her reality as she's seeing it, and then the physical reality of everyone else's world where she is screaming in pain. I mean, I'm just saying what happens. I'm not even saying what I thought about it, but hopefully you hear it in my voice, just how affecting and effective it was.
I think the truly smart way of depicting that Rose Glass used was, like I said, having this objective camera moment where we are behind the people on the beach who are looking at her and seeing her as the angel, right? For most of the movie, we're really subjective with her, as you said. And this is sort of, we've really stepped back and are objectively looking at her, and we're seeing this moment of her being an angel and people reacting to it. And so it is really fooling us into thinking, oh shit, is this real? Was all of this real? Is she now actually an angel? Is that real? And just giving us the hint of that possibility and then following it up with the flash of her actually burning, it's the best use of that technique.
Yeah.
It's fooling us. And then slamming the hammer down. It's so good.
Well, I mean, yeah, maybe just put some words to it. I mean, the best endings you can't totally, but hey, that's all we're trying to do here. it's like if this whole movie she's like the addict searching for their ultimate hit, like we said, and thinking that she has reached some sort of salvation in her mind, but the whole time we're like, no girl, this ain't it, just to then have that hit her like a ton of bricks, and just the inescapable of it now, where it's like it's too late, even if if that was a moment of realization for her in that pain too. Just the sheer human response to being burned alive, just that tragedy of it being too late is, I think, a big part of why it's so powerful.
And there's also, I think, it speaks to, and maybe this has always, historically always been true, but I think right now it's really important of I don't know if I want to call it a message, but it's pointing at a really important thing that humans have to grapple with. And I think it's particularly poignant now when you have people who are falling kind of prey to broad external manipulation. And, you see this with like cults, for example. The moment of realization that the whole belief system that you have attached yourself to is a sham is one of the most tragic things. Like, watching somebody go through that realization of like, oh my God, everything I knew was actually bullshit is so tragic. And we right now are actually privy to seeing a lot of people have that experience. And so it feels, although the subject matter in this movie is quite different, it's still pointing at that same thematic thing. And I think that thing has been around forever. It's not a new thing, but we're just like I said, more privy to that experience right now in the world, because there's a lot of people who get down the rabbit hole, whatever particular one they've gone down, and sometimes it is their demise, but a lot of the time it's actually, having to climb back out of it is like really, really hard and tragic to see.
And it's that the tragedy too, I think, is more so is the people who, if a lot of we haven't used the word so much, but so much of this was about loneliness and isolation too.
Yeah. Yep.
And not being touched from outside hands. That's a weird way to put it. That just came to me. But is, how you're referring to it, those people, is everyone else's response who's not in the cult, is it going to be helping them light the candle, or is dismissing the way that they're trying to do it?
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, really, like, editorial point of view here, we have to, as like human beings, be more like understanding of that and like welcoming to those people to be like, we should talk.
It doesn't matter how far in crazy town someone seems, you have to just respect their point of view. Can use, I think just it's easy to take this as extreme point of view, but even flat earthers, our friend Daniel made that great documentary. Beyond the Curve, Behind the Curve. I was behind the curve on that one. I always forget that. But there's a great point sort of made in it of like these, no one here is stupid. In fact, they're really smart to have to kind of put all these pieces together in a sort of outside of the box way of thinking. It's really on the mainstream scientific community and asking, how have they led these bright minds astray? What aren't they doing that's led these minds astray? And then it breaks my heart, like the clip they used in the movie of Neil deGrasse Tyson, like trying to make it this big mic drop. Like he does a literal mic drop moment where he went off on how stupid flat earthers were, and then like literally dropped the mic, and the crowd was like, yeah, woo. But like, that's what he's doing is he's dressing up, Maud in her saintly hood at the party. It's ridicule. It's not helping her out of her situation.
Yeah, it's all this stuff of, like you said, isolation, and when you further confirm the divide between the person who feels isolated, they have nowhere else to go but more isolation. It is just not going to end well.
I think it's that
you got to bring them into the fold.
Those other points of view, they sort of inherently challenge what the predominant point of view is.
Yeah,
and
totally.
I think maybe it's the human thing on the majority side, but rather than just being skeptical towards everything and trying to meet people where they're at, it's like this immediate defense of having to double down on, the predominant beliefs. That then ends up in ridicule. That's just that's not the way we're going to do it. I'm kind of getting on a lecture high horse here almost, but these are just important things I think about.
Well, but I think the point ultimately is that this movie, Saint Maud, is touching on those things without really like pushing it too much. Like they're not overtly going, "Hey, this is like you gotta whatever." I don't know what the
I mean,
the
I
weird
love
thing
these,
I was gonna say.
Yeah, it's I was really moved by the ending of Calvaire, and I talked about those themes exactly. I think when we did the top 10 of the crazy one falling in a pit of quicksand, and do you save them or not?
Right. No, you don't. Let them die. Ugh.
Well, that's the thing too.
They deserve it.
It's a spectrum of violence is what we don't realize, that like there's two ways of doing things, reaching out or not. And the natural escalation of not is it's rejection, it's separation, and that further is literal violence.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to hear the last thing I
Yes, I do. My goodness.
Because this was all those great moments, of course, but this is the one that just still takes me so off guard, and just like how perfect of a moment, how it came together and how unexpected it was. And not since The Exorcist did I feel this kind of this like moment of underlying tension in something that feels like it shouldn't be there at all, just like packed into a moment of like, and tension that shouldn't be there, but you feel it anyways, and kind of thing, where like those sort of those like different cuts to black, or the moments before the light turns on in The Exorcist, when you just feel this kind of tension in the air and you just know that there's evil in the works. The moment was when, I forget if Maud's going down to talk to Amanda or Carol, but it's Maud's at the top of the staircase, and we're seeing it from whoever's on the bottom of the staircase's point of view. And Maud like comes down the staircase, and her face is in like total darkness. And we just kind of see her in medium and don't really move from where we are. We're just seeing her come down the staircase. But like the way she kind of like speeds up at the end, it feels like, or something, and the way she's in total darkness, it just had this feel of this, oh my God, like she's going to be completely unhinged at some point. It felt like I just felt her coming at me, this intensity, and then before, as soon as I felt it, it was gone, because she's like, oh, hello, whatever she goes on to say. It just like it's so precise, just how you make that work and pull it off, and so unassuming. It's funny just her coming down the stairs, but I really thought it was one of the most incredible moments in the movie. So subtle and so affecting.
Yeah. Well, it makes me realize I've forgotten to say the one other thing for me, which I think actually is part of why those moments, that one in particular, work so well, is that this movie has some of the best sound design I've heard in a long time.
I mean,
the music and sound design in here is almost imperceptible, like I only one time thought about, I was like, ooh, this music is cool. I would like to use music similar to this in a horror film. And then for the rest of the movie, I never thought about it, but felt it.
It was the first time I was watching it, I like didn't even notice this, but then watching it, having it on this morning, there's this like, I swear it's like nearly constant in the movie. There's this subwoofer droning.
Yep.
Whoa, whoa.
It's brilliant. You want to make people uncomfortable. That's the way to do it. You put this low frequency just rumble in and whoo boy.
Yeah.
We're good to go.
Great.
Cool, dude.
All right. Well, let's move on then to see if there was anything that did not work for us in our aptly titled section. What did not work?
It's not ready yet.
Seems to work okay.
No, something important's missing.
What did not work?
Well, Tim.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you have anything?
You know, now that we've kind of talked it out, my general thing that I initially was gonna, I don't know, not complain about, but kind of my feeling when I finished the movie is that I think, and we've talked about this a little bit before, about the first viewing, like post first viewing kind of like malaise, maybe. I don't know what you call it. I think I wanted, well, certainly I wanted more. And I think that you can't hold that desire for more against the movie. And I was a little bit. I was like, oh, damn, I wanted to see more, like, more with her demon eye, like, distortion stuff. I wanted to see that actualize more. Or I wanted to kind of have more of a her and the demon like moment. Or I was maybe it's based on expectations,
Like
you
when
know,
you see
whatever.
the poster, you think it's an exorcism movie, so you're
kind
like,
of maybe. So when I got what I got, I was like, there was like almost a little letdown, but like in sitting with it and kind of going through all of the things that are so great about it, I think that it's not, it's baseless.
I think
my feelings are.
Pushing those things anymore would have been lame and crossed a line.
Yeah. The thing is, it's a small movie, right? It's 83 minutes long. It's probably only about 75 minutes of movie with,
It's funny.
And so-
to jump to things of note real quick, just on the length of it. She wrote it. It was 90 pages, but then realized it was like in some free screenwriting program. So then when she switched it over to Final Draft, it like lost 8 pages. So it was actually shorter than she thought. It's cool.
That's funny. Yeah. It left me wanting more. If that can be it can't be a thing that didn't work. But my initial reaction was to be like, damn it. But no, I can't really think of anything that is actually significant and substantial enough to say it didn't work.
Maybe when we do our next retrospective episode in 70 episodes or whatever, you got to rewatch Saint Maud right before it to see.
Yeah,
that's sad. I mean, the only thing that I'm like, we've talked about, we're so sensitive to this, is some special effects, like just the fire effect at the end. Where I was just like, oh, it doesn't look good. But it was weird.
I agree with that. Yeah.
But then I
yeah.
don't know if this was me just really wanting to like it more though on that sort of second viewing. But I was like, oh, but if it's all in her head, then it can have this cartoonish, fantastical quality.
That was kind of my takeaway.
So I don't know.
Yeah, like what is there to not like?
I mean, that was the only possible it for me. Like, no, nothing else was holding me back at all. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't like seeing people throw up. There you go.
Great. Well, should we move on then?
Yeah.
Great. All right, here we go. Last section. Things of note.
Things of note!
This should be interesting.
Another scene we could have mentioned in what worked, of course, I don't know why I didn't, was the very witch-esque moment of her hearing the voice of God. I thought that was so cool. That
Yes.
voice was so unnerving. And I mentioned it in Things of Note because that's where I had it down. It's her speaking. It's her voice.
Is it really?
Yeah, just slowed down or whatever.
And that is amazing.
It was Rose Glass learned that as soon as that she learned that Morfydd Clark spoke Welsh, she's like, "Oh, perfect! You're gonna do the voice," and that makes makes so much sense that you'd want it to be her voice distorted.
That's amazing.
Which is what it is, and that's what we're saying.
Yep.
And it's like, jokes on her if she only included herself as the greater glory of God, but instead she is, but it's in a destructive way.
That is genius. I love that. Well, There you go. Who is this Rose Glass person? She's amazing.
It was cool. She was talking about, how just sort of the gestation of how it started. And it sounded like, like a lot of things, it was just sort of all these different factors and things floating around in her head coming together. But she did say she settled at the beginning on just sort of the what if or the premise, the setup. Young woman hears voice of God in her head and falls in love with him. And then from that evolved into like turning, less and less of hearing the voice until it was that one scene that I just talked about, and more to this relationship with this other woman who, it was interesting too to learn that first started out, in her head as that classic, like she was more of an older woman versus the sort of younger hip woman with cancer. It's great how that evolved. Evolved from that initial setup, into something else, and then evolved even further when, she was trying to get it made, and whoever distributors or people reading the script were like, this really reads like a horror script. And that's when she was kind of like, oh, yeah, I see that. I'm on board with that. So then kind of drew out those more horror-specific moments from what was already kind of, set up to be that way.
Nice. Speaking of, one thing of note I had that I guess I could have put in that worked, but I just thought it was a subtle little thing when Maud is looking through the big poster, like framed posters that are kind of under a blanket. And they're all like posters from dance performances that Amanda had been in. One of them, I think it's the first one, she pulls out, it says Cole 666 on it. And like just these, it like immediately made me think, man, the confirmation bias that exists in us, right? Like that we will assign meaning even if there is no meaning, right? Like 666, somebody who's super religious is going to take that and run with it in the Satan direction, right? But it is just three numbers, right? Like it doesn't necessarily mean that. But putting little things like that, there kind of are a few sprinkled in the first act of just tiny little suggestions of things. Even the wallpaper in Amanda's room being this sort of quite ornate, there's a really cool design to it. It's got kind of a gold leaf design. I mean, gold leaf, not leaves, but like the actual coloring is gold leaf on green, but it's ornate. And then in Maud's room, it's a sort of similar upside down, or not upside down, a similar kind of V. It's what do you call that? I think it's called a chevron chevron symbol. They both have that symbol, but Maud's is like this very simplified, like not ornate version of it. Like there are these little sort of design things all throughout that I just thought they're noteworthy in saying that there's specificity in them, but like they just they really support the mood, especially in the first act, of like showing us what am I trying to say? Giving us just a sense of the world, I guess, is the best way of putting it.
Yeah.
What else?
See, I had written down there. Oh, this is a quote from I wrote it down from an interview with her. There are figures who claim to hear the voice of God thousands of years ago and were revered. However, in 2020, if someone says they hear the voice of God in their heads, I'm sure the public reaction will be different. So that's just kind of getting at what we talk about changing norms. And
yeah.
I don't know. I just thought that was interesting, and sort of thinking about how and when and why did this switch over history occur.
I will not expand on my personal beliefs as to why that is, because we don't have time for it.
Got it. Another moment should have mentioned in what worked. I mean, we mentioned it kind of, the walking on nails in her shoes, but just tying that specifically to, something that Rose Glass said she was really interested in when writing this, when starting to write it, was this idea of people's inner worlds and then how we view them, and just the richness of someone's inner world and their subjectivity versus how easy it is just to not remember, acknowledge that. So just perfect symbolism, metaphor, whatever, for which it was so good how she's walking on nails in shoes so she can be out in public, with this suffering that way, and no one's the wiser. It was so good.
Yeah.
I mean, the last little thought I had was just kind of to wrap up kind of some stuff we were saying earlier, unless you have anything else.
I was just going to talk about sort of the acclaim that it's gotten so far.
Let's hear that.
So you got, like, obviously it we had mentioned before, it premiered at Toronto. And then it's screened at a bunch of other places, and it's just gotten a lot of, I think, rightly deserved acclaim. Let's see. Brilliantly unsettling blend of body horror and psychological thriller. Impressive debut for writer-director Rose Glass. Universal acclaim. Danny Boyle, hell yeah. Said, a genuinely unsettling and intriguing film, striking, affecting, and mordantly funny at times. Its confidence evokes the ecstasy of films like Carrie, The Exorcist, and Jonathan Glazer's Under the Skin. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Agree. So yeah. I'm super excited to see what's next for Rose Glass.
Yes.
This is her debut film. Like, that's like feature. That's awesome.
She said she's working on I think she said is like a romance, but kind of is her next thing.
Great.
So it's just more, since we were kind of touching, going on it throughout, the idea, and just to bring it back to that example, reaching out to people, how to best help people, our own, ridicule versus not, how everyone at the party is treating her. I don't know. I just was feeling compelled to like point out how I think of it is so often we look at that, and when we were looking at it in terms of not accepting people where they're at, therefore also insinuating we need to change this person. That's sort of our default mode, I think, of looking at it that is so unhealthy or unhelpful, is like, we need to change this person, not meeting them up where they're at. Like, we think of it in those terms of like, when you're changing someone, it's so much not wanting to make them better, but like wanting to get rid of the bad things, we aren't accepting you because these things you have done or are doing or the way you're acting are bad. And it's so easy just to kind of laugh at that and say, oh, Maud, But I think the healthier way to frame that is, rather than a sort of getting rid of traits, is how do you help someone open up to more compassion, let's say. And I think that's by doing it on the other person's end too. So rather than looking at sort of, helping people or whatever, if someone seems lost, as sort of a changing the negative about them, think of it like on both ends of the spectrum as a needing to open up to compassion. So it's not like you're sort of shaming the bad parts, but rather helping to coax out the positive.
Yeah, it's so common that when somebody sees something that they don't like, that they put the responsibility on the person doing the thing that they don't like. It's like you if you don't like it, you should carry some of that responsibility if you want somebody to behave differently as well. Like, you should put in some of the work too. If it means that much to you to condemn somebody else, you should bear some of that responsibility. So it's just this knee jerk, like, oh, they're all this and forget about them, or whatever the attitude becomes. It cannot be a closed door attitude. It just doesn't make sense. And it never works, ever.
Yeah. So again, you're helping people open themselves up more, those positive sides.
Yeah, and you have to be a part of that.
And yes, and that's how you do it, point being. Yeah.
So
compassion,
cool,
understanding, great.
Yeah.
All right. How about some recommendations to wind us down?
I watched, which I've seen this before. I watched like the first half of Princess Mononoke again. And man, that opening scene is so cool and so scary.
Are you recommending Princess Mononoke, or the first half, or the first scene?
I'm recommending the entire movie because the ending is fantastic and creepy and scary too, but it's so good. It's so good, the whole movie. I just was sort of taken because I think it wouldn't have come to mind as a recommendation necessarily, because I generally try to steer toward more horror stuff. But when I turned it on, I was like, well, this opening scene by itself is super scary. So hell yeah, get into it.
Cool. Yeah, all the Ghibli movies are available on like HBO Max and stuff now, so it's cool. I will recommend Dead from 1971, part of the Australian, new wave or whatever. All these like weird dark movies they were making. Like, I recommended Long Weekend. I watched Wake in Fright with Gary Bond and Donald Pleasance. It was on Shudder for a long time. I don't know if it still is. It's on Amazon Prime right now.
I think I've seen that.
It was really disturbing, and like, it's sort of pitched as like a plunging headlong into his own destruction, kind of a descent into hell kind of thing. But it never crosses a line into like totally unrealistic territory. So the kind of realism in this descent, it just especially gets under your skin even more. It's kind of like this guy who's on his he hates his school teaching job and is like on a little summer hiatus or something, or like a weekend hiatus. And it's just ends up at this like weird little town where it feels like it's 98% men who live there. He's like gambles all his money away, and he just like gets caught up with this crazy crew where they just drink and shoot kangaroos, and it's super sad and depressing, their state, but it like gets at a lot of really interesting things and masculinity and all that stuff that these Australian movies seem to do so well. So yeah, Wake and Fright.
Cool. All right. Is it your turn to pull from the hat?
Yes. And since we are in person, I tell you when to stop, which is stop.
Can you see that?
Upside down.
Oh,
but I can see it. It says May from 2012.
All right.
Have you seen May from 2012?
I don't think so.
It's just one I know, like or no, it's from 2002 actually.
Oh.
Lucky McKee, who did the he did the woman.
Oh,
okay,
I've seen the poster
that.
for this.
Right, the
Yeah,
poster's so recognizable. It's this woman whose like skin is all white and red lipstick, black hair. All right, we'll see what it's about.
Cool.
Cool. That'll be next week.
Cool.
Here at Dismembering Horror. In the meantime, you can find us wherever you found us. Our big ask is you tell a friend, tell a like-minded friend that Tim and Ryan are here for them.
Always.
Always, always. So, in closing, whoever you may pray to or not, we do thank you so much for listening.
Yes, and we will see you next time.
Goodbye.